Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which we work, the Bunurong and Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I would like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. In this paper, co-authored with my colleagues Associate Professor Joanne Evans and Dr. Phan, we describe an approach for designing information infrastructure, systems that enable people to exert their rights over information as it manifests and changes through time over generational timescales. This work was part of a larger program that is addressing the lifelong record-keeping needs of those caught up in the child protection sector. In this study, we conducted a series of participatory design and prototyping workshops over an 18-month period with a core group of 3 academic and 5 community researchers. Every information system is also a record-keeping system for someone in some context at some time. A system that deals with authoritative information that may provide memory, identity, evidentiality, and accountability beyond the immediate transactional context. Information systems that lack these record-keeping affordances often fail to uphold the record-keeping rights that underpin a raft of basic human rights. Consequently, such systems often disproportionately disenfranchise the most marginalized in society. More so if the record-keeping context involves traumatic experiences, as the making, keeping, and control of these most personal and private records are entwined with issues of power, trust, autonomy, surveillance, and accountability. The challenge then is to understand how to design systems that enable people to exert their record-keeping rights as they manifest and change diachronically, or through time. Out-of-home care is the term used in Australia to describe the living arrangements for children and young people unable to stay in the parental home. Our concern is with the role and impact of childhood record-keeping within the care system, as we know that inadequate record-keeping can contribute to neglect and abuse, with impacts often extending far beyond childhood. Record-keeping problems in the care sector are exacerbated by the complexity of the information silos and consortia that have been designed and optimized from an organizational perspective. Consequently, record-keeping access here is fragmented and problematic. When those separated from family have turned to records to make sense of those experiences, they have too often found them incomplete, insulting, incorrect, and incomprehensible. In response, we envisage a safe and secure, distributed and participatory record-keeping network, populated by children and young people, and by their caregivers, allied professionals, communities, families, and so on. Our goal is this design, both the verb and the noun senses. What architecture and affordances should the design embody, and how should such a design be pursued? Our work is grounded in record-keeping informatics, the information science that comprises the technologies and social practices of conceiving, creating, managing, and deriving utility from authoritative information. Also, we know that information infrastructure is value-laden and inherently political. For example, the definition or even the inclusion or not of a data element is a statement of allowable actions or viewpoints within a socio-material context. In our research, we critically examine the role that record-keeping plays in the exercise and abuse of power in our society. So, we adopted a participatory research approach to bring together a range of living and professional expertises. We are sensitive to the symbolic power of the research context and the often alienating research experiences of those in care as often non-consensual subjects of research. We avoided extractive research techniques and instead took a more inclusive approach, striving to build relationships of trust and mutuality as we explored the design space of record-keeping rights and needs. We see consent as a process rather than a one-time transaction, and constantly revisited our jointly established protocols as our working relationship deepened. So, we endeavoured to break down the institutional research facade. We signposted the ever-changing on-campus workshop locations, provided food as a social leveller, invited participants to bring their children to workshops, employed a range of social communications platforms, handled jargon using a red card system to ensure mutual understanding, and remunerated our community research participants. We employed a de Bono-like approach with 7 record-keeping hats that ensured we continually considered various record-keeping perspectives. The trajectory was a visual representation of the breadth of care experiences, interpersonal relationships, and living contexts, together with possible events and transitions. It was derived from child protection documentation, tempered with the street knowledge of our participants with direct experience in child protection as children and/or parents. We then mapped each record type in the trajectory against stakeholders and life stages to analyse how records and record keeping manifest throughout their lives. Finally, we derived a set of dimensions of care experience that we used to create deep personas. These detailed childhoods, from the very first interaction with child protection services through to after leaving care, included vignettes, events, and intervention points, such as the reasons for care, placement moves, incidents, achievements and setbacks, relationship establishment and breakdown, interests, and so on. These deep personas helped us understand how our design could be used throughout childhood and beyond. They also gave us the basis for a rich set of test records. We prototyped a loosely coupled 3-tier architecture. At its core is a personal record-keeping registry decoupled from the plurality of legacy record-holding systems. This registry is not an aggregation repository of records, but a platform for the management of records that are usually held elsewhere. We focused on defining architectural affordances and the minimum interoperability needed between legacy systems and our proposed infrastructure. We also arrived at a personalizable and offline-enabled browser-based client, decoupled from the registry server. The registry is based on an activity modeling paradigm that supports a complex knowledge graph of activities, participants, mandates, and representations that can facilitate record keeping under the control of those recorded. The registry also serves as a point of creation and ongoing management for other personal records, such as biographical information, that constantly needs to be shared differentially in a controlled manner. Our design work itself, together with the outputs, reinforced and clarified a set of strong concepts for the design of diachronic trauma-sensitive systems. These are diachronic contingency, as design processes and outputs are context-dependent and rooted in movement through time. Individuality, rejecting ideas of a generic user or research participant. Transience of service provision, access and engagement. Child person-centeredness, shifting from an organizational client framing to one of that consciously privileges the participants' perspectives in research, design and systems. An activity focus, where design becomes an end in itself, while information systems shift from repositories to dynamic spaces for record-keeping related interaction. Complexity of ever-shifting networks of people, perspective and activities. Trust and agency as core elements of the design. So, in conclusion, I would like to thank our research participants, my co-researchers and authors Joanne and Phan, and the other academic researchers in the Rights in Records by Design program. For more information, you can of course read our paper, but also follow these links to read more about the program, our academic outputs, and find more about the proof of concept prototype. Thank you.